stepping in as well.
Over the top. I mean, that was a full force shot to the temple. I mean, he's right now. So they wipe off his gloves, but you look at him like he's really feeling it right now. I mean, he probably has no idea where he is.
When I'm going to take your soul, and you're either going to give up or you're going to get knocked out. And unless you have that instinct, you just will never be a good fighter.
Likely that one big shot's going to land if the guy's not throwing other shots. So I thought with less artillery in the air, less bombs in the air, that the guy would have a chance to get to later rounds.
The aftermath is already carved in stone, and it's brutal because this wasn't just Jake Paul getting dropped. This shattered every fantasy about celebrity boxing, and let me break this down for you right now. Reputations got reshuffled and pride got stomped before the ref even finished counting. Let's roll this back because the setup tells you everything you need to know. Joe Rogan was grinning at ringside like he already knew the punchline. And come on, this was never going to be competitive once you accepted reality. A two-time Olympic gold medalist heavyweight just walked in and everyone pretended this was somehow fair. This wasn't a bout, this was an execution timer. And if that pisses you off, then perfect. Because there's more they haven't told you yet, and it's coming hard.
Well, realistically, it's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're going to fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists.
I'm watching Rogan sit there next to Joshua with this knowing smile because the book was already written and he vocalized what everyone was thinking but nobody wanted to admit, which is that legitimate boxing doesn't give a damn about social media metrics or storylines or manufactured drama. And when Jake crashed to the mat, the surprise wasn't him going down. It was everyone finally accepting what they knew all along, the nauseating sound of delusion. Finally breaking because Jake typically cherry picks worn out MMA fighters and washed up celebrities, and now he's face to face with an heavyweight destroyer with surgical precision. And this should haunt you because Rogan basically said the outcome was guaranteed, and if he's right, then somebody approved this massacre. And why does it seem like they wanted the humiliation broadcast globally?
It's not just physical, it's psychological. And when you understand the psychological warfare, I did say to you is that, Jake, what's going to happen? I'm going to see a time when I'm going to take your soul, and you're either going to give up or you're going to get knocked out. And unless you have that instinct...
Joshua didn't hold back afterward, and that's when things got really uncomfortable because he flat out stated the early finish actually protected Jake from something much worse, much more systematic, much more devastating. And I don't think anyone grasped what he was really saying because this was trash talk. This was a public service announcement. He explained that if the fight had continued, he would have dismantled Jake systematically, physically, mentally, spiritually, and pay attention because this next part is explosive. When a world champion calls a quick knockout an act of kindness, it means he had a very clear picture of how catastrophic it was about to become. Now ask yourself who greenlit this, knowing that information.
Because straight after the fight, I heard the question being posed to Joshua, will he now fight Fury? And then my first thought was, after what I've seen, who cares? After that, who cares if Joshua fights Fury? I like Anthony Joshua immensely, Spencer. Any exchanges I've had with him, I think he comes across terrifically well. But I fail to see where it's taken us, where it's taken him, other than hugely increasing his bank balance. You know, I really fail to see what this has done.
Well, it's done nothing, but he was going to fight in November, like I said, and he's just gone in there against Jake Paul. What has it done for his legacy? Absolutely zero. But it was, you know, he's earned a lot of money doing that. And he's going to go again, and he's going to fight possibly February, March, and then there's that Tyson Fury fight that's looming that could happen in September, whether Tyson Fury decides to come out of retirement or not come out of retirement. For Anthony Joshua, he's earned a hell of a lot of money. This is prize fighting, and that's what it's all about. And that's what.
The reaction came instantly like a broken bone because one camp screamed cash grab, while the other whispered maybe Jake has arrived and I'm going insane because everyone missed the actual point because Joshua isn't some stepping stone. He's a Fortress Olympic gold, multiple world championships, decades of elite brutality, and Jake is still collecting basic credibility one fight at a time, so when that right cross connected, it didn't just end the evening, it ended the conversation. Simon Jordan called it devastating for the sport, and you could feel it because when seasoned commentators say boxing looks ridiculous, it's not anger, it's panic. And here's what terrifies everyone: this boundary doesn't get redrawn.
Earning more than Joshua. That apart, Spencer, 6 rounds to get Paul out of there. Reputationally, how does it leave AJ?
Well, thankfully, it didn't go to points because I think that would have been a disaster for Anthony Joshua. I think that he needed to get the job done inside the distance, and he done it. Look, he could have done it at any given point. I think that he could have cut the ring off whenever he wanted to and got Jake Paul out of there. He took his time on that. He allowed Jake Paul to run around like a rabbit and throw the occasional shot from time to time. And I think he only landed one clean punch, didn't he, Anthony Joshua? And that was the one that broke his jaw in 2 places.
But, I mean, you said, did you not, to us in this very studio the other day, he's got to get him out of there in round 1.
I did.
Otherwise, what are we seeing?
Exactly that, and I think what we saw there was a little bit of entertainment, and that was pretty much it. But not entertainment that many people enjoyed. If I'm honest, I think that people wanted to.
Simon Jordan expanded on this later, and the room got dead silent because he explained how these spectacles contaminate legitimate competition with social media theater and suffocate fighters who climb the ranks properly. And if you dismiss that as generational bias, you're missing everything because he emphasized Joshua has already conquered everything and doesn't require carnival attractions to maintain relevance. And here's bombshell number 2, because if someone who's already achieved legendary status keeps getting dragged into this circus, then somebody else is orchestrating these moves and their agenda is far from finished, not even halfway done.
This is a giant Olympic gold medalist heavyweight. I mean, Anthony Joshua is fucking
Here's the
terrifying.
thing that nightmares are made up.
And he's got that one punch nuclear power. One punch.
The legacy discussion made me physically sick because reporters kept asking what Joshua gained from this, and the brutal truth was absolutely nothing beyond a bigger paycheck and deeper questions about his judgment. Because, from a reputation standpoint, if this had gone the distance, it would have been catastrophic and everybody understood that. So Joshua handled business and finished it immediately. But here's where paranoia starts creeping in, because when fights get marketed as entertainment rather than genuine violence, you forget what happens when real violence actually arrives, and tonight, real violence showed up early and grinned.
Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul shared a ring. Your takeaways from the 6 rounds that we saw, presuming you watched?
I was impressed with Jake Paul. I thought that, following on from what we're saying, right? A few years ago, he was on Disney as a kid, acting up, and has decided to become a professional fighter. That takes balls, but he's obviously striving to be as good as he can be. You can see that in the way that he moves, the way that he is developed in how he's punching and performing. But to make a 2-time world heavyweight champion that's still live, AJ's still got something about him, to make him miss in such an accomplished manner. All right, so at times he was jumping out and running around, but there were times when he was well in range and still making AJ unable to land a clean, solid shot. He deserves a lot of respect for that. And then the shot that actually finished the fight, that broke his jaw quite badly, didn't put him out. That shot's that shot he threw with serious intention has put a lot of professional heavyweights to sleep. He didn't go to sleep. He actually finished on his knees, didn't he? Laughing and spitting blood out of his mouth. So, like they say, it's a special type of crazy and a special type of brave to do it. But I actually, hats off to him, because he showed that he's developing some accomplished little skills in there to look after himself. The size difference is always going to fatigue him.
I know everyone will come with the idea that, AJ should just go in there 1 round and smash him to bits, and that should be it was a big ring, right? Perhaps he could have cut the ring off a bit better, but would I be right in saying that regardless of skill level, if you forget about that with the 2 for a second, if someone is on the back foot on their bike and doing what Jake was doing, it's difficult, no matter who you are, no matter the kind of separation in skill level.
It's a big ring, and you've either got to run at him and look like a novice yourself, or just take your time and understand
Rogan kept pushing afterward, and if you weren't paying attention, you missed how ominous his words were, because he described Joshua as one of the most freakish heavyweights in history, and said he moves like a welterweight trapped in a giant's body, and that description alone should murder Crossover dreams permanently, because when devastating speed meets crushing power, there are no practice rounds. There are only conclusions, and I guarantee there's a third revelation buried here, because Rogan explicitly stated matching Jake or Logan against him is insanity, and yet people continue discussing it like it's destined to happen somehow.
Would be more of a mismatch than Jake Paul. You know what I mean? Because at least Jake Paul has taken boxing or has trained with real boxing trainers and real boxes. Whereas Logan Paul, you know, he did that exhibition with Floyd, and Floyd's a little guy. Not saying a little guy can't thump, because Floyd really gave him some two pieces with no sides, right? But at the same time, you take his friend, Floyd's friend, Anthony Joshua, and get hit by him and see what happens. The same thing. Probably worse, because I think Logan, you know, he's a little taller than Jake. And because he's a little taller than Jake, he may think he's a little stronger than Jake. Which I don't know which one's true or not. I don't think it makes a difference. But because he may feel that way, he may want to go in there and try to bang it out with AJ. And if that happens, it's going to be a lot quicker. See, that 6 rounds it took AJ to finally catch Jake. It took that way because Jake was on that bicycle, moving, being elusive, trying to come in and then come out. He tried to do a very poor man's Alexander Usyk, right? And it didn't work for him. Logan ain't going to do that. Logan's going to come in throwing punches and bunches like he did with Floyd, trying to get him in there and, you know, do all this stuff. And what's going to happen as soon as AJ lines him up, sets his punch, he's going to hit Jake and he's going to break Jake down.
Adam Booth jumped in next, and this is where reality got twisted, because he actually praised Jake's performance. And that caught me completely off guard, because he noted Jake made Joshua whiff several times and displayed genuine ring intelligence. And that could sound encouraging, except it absolutely isn't, because Booth immediately yanked it back to earth and explained once Joshua found his rhythm, it was finished. And that's the most terrifying aspect, because progress couldn't save him, and it won't rescue whoever comes next, and explain to me why this feels like a prophecy everyone's ignoring. The Logan Paul speculation erupted immediately, and I chuckled until I realized how serious people were, because experts demolished the idea completely, saying it would be comedy for every wrong reason, because Jake dedicates his entire life to training and still got demolished, while Logan treats it like a side project. And here's bombshell number 4, because something about this discussion feels dangerous, like people are challenging Catastrophe to strike twice, because they predicted Logan wouldn't survive 3 minutes, and instead of killing the conversation, it amplified it, and that tells you this spiral is accelerating. The brother comparison happened next, and it stung worse than the knockout, because they acknowledged Jake actually commits to boxing seriously and earned legitimate professional respect, and that's apparently the bright side. But listen to how pathetic that sounds when measured against a destroyed jaw and a chuckling commentary legend, because even within respect there are boundaries, and when analysts say Logan would transform boxing into a carnival, they're not being dramatic, they're making prophecies, and prophecies like that tend to manifest themselves. Eventually, everyone attempted to wrap this up cleanly, and I completely rejected it, because they claimed 2 narratives emerged from this fight, and both felt hollow, because either celebrity boxing is destroying the sport, or Jake deserves recognition for showing courage. And I'm shouting, because statements can coexist and still lead to disaster, because talent, preparation, and legitimate power always prevail, but the consequences always land somewhere else, and nobody discusses who absorbs the damage when the broadcast ends. I can't stop replaying that chuckle, Rogan's chuckle, because it wasn't malicious, it was inevitable, like watching physics demonstrate basic principles, and that disturbs me more than outrage, because inevitability implies prediction, and prediction implies this wasn't random, and if this was coincidental, then there are boardrooms and signatures and agreements we never witness, and I absolutely hate where that investigation leads, not 1 degree. You assume this concluded because the final bell sounded and bones cracked and payments processed, but absolutely not. This cannot be the conclusion because the vocabulary shifted afterward. The atmosphere changed the way people discussed mercy and nightmares and certainty, because when a sport adopts that tone, it's preparing for collision. And I swear there's someone we haven't mentioned yet who's about to get pulled into this chaos, whether they consent or not. Everyone keeps wondering what happens next, like that's the safe inquiry. But the real question is, who profits from treating this like normalcy? Because normal contests don't feel like warnings and normal knockouts don't sound like admissions. And I'm telling you directly, something continues to develop backstage. Someone's deceiving through silence. And when it explodes, it won't be contained. It'll be deafening, chaotic, and permanent. So don't get comfortable and don't navigate away assuming you understand the complete picture, because this didn't resolve anything. It revealed everything. Revealed truths don't heal quietly. They rot, and as long as money keeps screaming louder than wisdom, this powder keg stays active. And I'm not confident the next development involves fighting at all, because the real detonation might concern responsibility. And that's the conversation nobody's prepared for yet.